I would like to think that I'm living a principled life, as I'm sure you would as well. But defining and measuring our lives comes down to having a few fundamental principles that can propel us forward in both our personal and our professional lives. And it is through these fundamentals where we can become a person of influence. So I want you to stick around today because my guest is going to share us with a few secrets of overcoming common barriers to growth and setting intentional goals that lead to sustained success. And we're going to discuss strategies for balancing influence with authority and the critical role of integrity in leadership. And boy, don't we need that in today's environment. And finally, we're going to look into ways to integrate servant leadership principles into our daily interactions. So I can't wait to get into our conversation. Now, before we get into today's episode, just come to grips about one other thing, and that is inevitably there will come a time in your life when you will hit a wall. Whether that's a marriage that's not working or a career or business that's stagnated, or maybe your personal life is just flatlined. So if you're dealing with any of these or a combination of them and are finally fed up with where your life's at, then allow me to help you get clear on what needs to be done and how to go about getting your life back on track so you can live the life you were meant to live. And so I want you to go to awakenman.net and download a free Setting the Compass exercise to get you in alignment with what it is to mean a purposeful life. And with that, let's get on with today's episode.
The average man today is sleepwalking through life, many never reaching their true potential, let alone ever crossing the finish line to living a purposeful life. Yet, the hunger still exists, albeit buried amidst his cluttered mind, misguided beliefs, and values that no longer serve him. It's time to align yourself for greatness. It's time to become a revolutionary man. Stay strong, my brother.
Welcome, everyone, to the Revolutionary Man podcast. I'm the founder of the Awakened Man movement and your host, Alan DeMonso. As you're listening to today's episode, I'd like you to consider this. What steps can you take to become a more effective leader in your personal and your professional life? And then I'd like you to reflect on your own journey of growth and influence, and how can embracing the principles of servant leadership transform the way you interact with others? I know those are two big things for you to consider, but we're going to do some work here today. And so I started this conversation by talking about living a principled life. And so as fathers and husbands and leaders, it is our duty to ensure we show up as a powerful and intentional men God, our families, and our communities are calling us to be. And so some days that can be a pretty tall order. And if we are not really careful, we may find ourselves leading in ways of not having others come to follow us. So today, my guest intends to lay a few breadcrumbs on the trail of living a principled life. So allow me to introduce my guest. Kevin Wayne Johnson has taken up the task of developing individual and organizational operating excellence as his life's mission. He coaches and coaxes audiences to live out their gifts and awaken their potential. Kevin also provides organizations and people who work within them the tools to forge effective personal and intercommercial communications, and he delivers these trainings on the elements of dynamic relationships, so these teams can be equipped with attributes needing to develop individuals into leaders. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation. Welcome to the show today, Kevin.
Well,
How
Alan,
are things, my friend?
Thank you so much for this wonderful invitation. Looking forward to it. And by the way, you're doing an excellent job there.
Thank you so much, my friend. Thank you so much. Here at the Revolutionary Man podcast, we always start our conversations off with really talking about your hero's journey, and we're all on our own journey. So I wanted to like you to tell us about a time in your life when you knew things had to change. What did you do about that, and how did it shape that? How did that experience?
That's an excellent question, and I know we're going to talk a little bit about leadership, but part of my leadership journey has everything to do with the fact that my brother and I were sons of a U.S. Marine, and anyone who's listening and anyone who's watching your podcast know if you happen to have grown up in a military household, you move around a lot. It's hard to stay stationary and to stay put, meet some really good friends and cultivate good relationships, because as soon as you do, it's time to pack up again. So my dad served 20 years in the United States Marine. He went in, enlisted. He was very fortunate to earn a commission halfway through his career, and he retired as a junior officer. He retired the year that I was transitioning from 10th grade to 11th grade in high school. What a bad time. And as a part of that retirement, of course, we're living away from home, and he wants to get back home to be with his siblings and to be with his parents. I understand that. And although I tried to negotiate and tried to get him to think otherwise, he's a Marine. He made up his mind. We're going. So I find myself at a brand new high school, Alan, in the 11th grade. I was doing well on the junior varsity football team where we were, and now I have to start over again. Lo and behold, my 11th grade English one-on-one teacher, Miss Atkins, Ellen Atkins, I'll never forget it. She saw my body language. She picked up on my countenance. She saw that I wasn't really myself because I had been in her class long enough to master English. But she saw something and she intervened at the perfect time because I was feeling really down, trying to gain new friends. And she came to me one day and she said, Kevin, I want you to approach the varsity basketball coach and let him know that you're available to work side by side with him, the assistant coaches, and the basketball team to announce the games, all of the home games. They need a voice behind the microphone to introduce the players, both home and away, and do play-by-play at the basketball games. Our gymnasium holds about 350 students and parents and friends, and I think you would do well. Guess what, Alan? Unbeknownst to me, a 16-year-old 11th grader, she had already paved the way behind the scenes with the basketball coach. All I had to do was follow up and approach, and he said yes. That was a very monumental shift in my life, because one thing I want to share with everyone is that not only was the timing perfect, but other people see things in us that we can't see ourselves. And the rest is history. I've been speaking behind mics ever since. I was a 16-year-old in the 11th grade, had no idea what that would mean at the time, but that was a monumental moment in my life.
Absolutely. Jeez, right, thrown right into it. Just think about how many the fear of public speaking. Basically, that's what you're doing for most people on this planet, and being thrown in that at 16. I commend you, and following through and listening to your story, Kevin, reminds me, very close to my heart, to my personal journey. My father worked in the mines. We have lots of potash up here in Canada, and he was working in a potash mine, and he was tired for years of driving 40 minutes one way all the time. And so we moved from this one small town to where the town that actually had the mine at. And that was a transition for me. It was grade 9 into grade 10. And in my experience was, being the new kid in town, I had to really fight my way through. I can remember, guys coming up and picking on me. And I used sports similar to what you're talking about. And I used basketball and volleyball and badminton to get me into a place where I didn't have to feel like I had to run for my life every day going to school, because I won many fights by at least a block and a half. I'm happy to say. And so hearing your story really resonates with me about, how that transition as a young man, how the things we have to deal with. And there was a decision my father had to make as well. And it was both financially important for us, and as well as really educationally, because we were in a really small
thank you for
town.
your story
so thank you
as
so
well.
much for sharing that. We're going to talk a lot about leadership here today. And one of the things that I mentioned in the opening is really about some common barriers that we have to personal growth. And so in your work, what are you finding that are most prevalent, some of these common barriers, and what are you doing to teach
that's
people
a
to
really
some
good
of them?
way to start the conversation, because you said common barriers. That leads me right to the proverbial communication. We all communicate different ways. We listen different ways. But as you reference common barriers, one of the keys to having a great conversation with someone is to find common ground, because that is a way that we can connect with people, because the attempt is always to build bridges, to always find some common ground. And when we do that, we're going to find similarities. And when it's all said and done, Alan, because of human behavior, it's difficult to not like somebody that you know. Now, we know people that we don't like, but it's not easy to dislike someone when you get to know them. And we get to know them by way of communication, talking, having dialogue, initiating a conversation. And that's a very key component, both in our personal and our professional development. So we encourage leaders through a number of different strategies and principles to get comfortable in initiating informal as well as formal conversations with others within our sphere of influence, because it ties into human behavior. All of us are created to be relational. All 8 billion people on the planet crave genuine, authentic, healthy relationships. And what happens is when that does not happen, we act out because that's what we're looking for. And no one's
Yes.
perfect, so we don't do things perfectly. But if we can be the catalyst and if we can initiate these conversations, which now lead to helping us get to know others better, them getting to know us better, now we're on our way to fulfilling that gap that everyone's looking for, and that is a good relationship. So when you mention that common barrier, the first common barrier I always think about is our ability or lack thereof to just have a conversation with people. It can be very informal, it can be very short and sweet. We're not trying to get into your business. We just want you to know that we give a care. And that's part of the leadership journey that people are looking for from their leaders, and that leaders need to understand and get comfortable with to make sure that we're touching base with those that we have been entrusted to lead.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that's, especially for men, that we need to become more comfortable. And I think we get the idea that to be successful, right, we may have to have lots of bravado and lots of confidence. And while some of that is true, on the other side of that coin, not everyone is going to necessarily lead a company or start their own business, but we still need to have the ability to engage in conversation, and even especially the most intimate ones, those with our spouses, with our children, and all that. And so I like that we're starting today's conversation about, being able to have authentic communication, because I think that is so key. And so, how does your work go, bridge that gap between personal and professional, and having that as being a complete leader? Because I think in doing looking at the work that we do here, I do see that sometimes I think as men we have two different personas. We have the work Al, and then there's the private Al. And
Yeah,
how are
just
you
doing
finding
our
that
best,
with your
Alan,
work?
to be consistent wherever we are. I have this phrase, and I'm not sure if somebody else should get credit for it or not. I don't know if it's anonymous. I don't know if maybe I should trademark it. But I tell people all the time, wherever you go, there you are. So whether you're at home, at your neighborhood meeting, at work, your social and civic organization, if you happen to be a member, your church, wherever you go, just putting forth that extra effort to just be consistent. Be the same person wherever you go. And that way you don't have to try to imitate or be less than genuine when you're in one environment and then try to be somewhere one else in a different environment. So just trying to stay true. The same way that I lead people in the workplace is the same way I raise my 3 sons. It's the same way I am at church. It's
Nice.
the same way I am when I go to the different activities that are taking place in the social and civic organizations that my wife or I belong to. Just being consistent. I was at a school this morning, first day of school in the city of Baltimore, a school for young men from first grade up to eighth grade, preparing them for high school and beyond. And there were 60 men that showed up with these 350 students just to stand in line and shake their hand and give them a good word of encouragement as they went into their school this morning. We do that every year. And the
Nice.
message is from me when I shake their hand is just be true to yourself, young man. do your best. And then I shake the next hand. And what it is just a message and helping them to be what I want them to be. I want them to see in me what I want them to be. And that's just one environment, but I do the same when I'm at home. I do the same when I'm at church. I do the same when I'm at work. Even as a trainer and a teacher and a coach and a mentor and a speaker on the topic of leadership, just being consistent regardless of what environment or what venue that I'm in. Again, I always remind us, no one's perfect. So we're not asking for perfection, but we're asking everyone to do their best. And if you do that, then we're well on our way to having good teams and good organizations.
Yeah, I completely agree with that sentiment as well. I really love that story you just talked about, having 60 men and coming up with that idea. And what a great way to model true healthy masculinity and leadership in such a simple yet profound way. And we need to do more of that across North America and really help these young men and get to becoming truly the men that they're meant to be. And I really like that your topic is in your book, the leadership with a servant's heart. And one of our 12 principles is servant leadership here at the Awakened Man. And we practice that once a year. And for an entire month, we focus on a core virtue. And that was one of them. And so tell me a little bit about, the book has received lots of acclaim. It's done phenomenally well for you, but tell me, how would you describe servant leadership?
Is much different than the original 1970 version when it was first introduced. I'm thinking about leadership from the whole person, mind, body, and spirit. So it's very true, Alan, that when a leader shows up, he or she does need to demonstrate, in order to get the credibility that they earned, they do need to demonstrate that they are a subject matter expert and that they have the acumen and the intelligence to get the job done. They know the work role. They could probably read on the back of their hand the words in the job description. They probably have done it, and they've probably done well. That brings us credibility. That's the mind. But as it relates to the heart, now we're and we're leading people for the people that they are, not just workers. People don't just show up to get a job done, although that is the mandate so that they can earn their benefits and earn their pay. But people really want to know, and they never ask. It's what we call the pink elephant in the room. They never ask. They really want to know how this person that has the trust to lead this team and this organization, or to lead me, they want to know, am I going to be provided with some developmental opportunities? Is this leader going to share resources? And am I going to be recommended for and approved to go to training? Is this leader going to give a care that I have opinions and I have thoughts and I have perspectives? Are they going to listen to me? Are they going to give me valuable and meaningful feedback as a part of my developmental journey or not? That's what people really want to know. Alan, those are matters of the heart. Leadership with a servant's heart demonstrates that we value and that we care, we honor and respect those that we are entrusted to lead. But equally important, because we all have issues and challenges that we're dealing with in life in general, how about some empathy and some compassion from time to time? Because a leader that's compassionate and empathetic is not weak, even though that may be the perception by some, but it demonstrates that we're human. And that's the difference from the original 1970 version of servant leadership and how I define it and how I see it. And that's why I title my books Leadership with a Servant's Heart, because the heart and the mind, when they're in alignment, now we're able to lead the total person, mind, body, and spirit. And it's more than just what we know. People expect us to know our stuff, but it's all of the other intangibles that help people in their career progression or not. And that's what people are really interested in, but they never say it.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I just think back to your opening story and talking
Hmm.
about, Miss Atkins, right? Really, she was leading with a servant's heart for you. What a great demonstration, though, those years ago. And then I think about, and I completely agree with your sentiment. I think, as leaders, people don't care how much you know until they
Yeah.
know how much you care. I don't know who said that, but I like that idea because it truly is. Because if you really want somebody to go through a wall for you, they talk a lot about that in sports, right? Well, that's a leader who cares about their people, who cares how well they do. Yes, it's a business and they're there to win games, but in the end, are they doing it because they care about each other and they want to work together as a unit, or is it truly an individual outcome? And that's, I think, is the work that really, as fathers as well, how we lead our family, our sons and our daughters, really can make the difference between a cohesive family and one that's
Yep.
not
Yep.
one that
Absolutely
made it
said. And
disjointed.
it's Maya Angelou who gets the credit for that quote. Others may have said it along the way, but she gets the credit.
Really, yeah, I love that quote. So you were talking about servant leadership, and it's obvious to me already that you exemplify what servant leadership is. But if you think about it, the people in your life that you've come across, who would you who would who would you determine that it would be a person that you would look to and say that's
Wow,
what
that's
servant
a good
leadership
one,
looks
Alan,
like?
because there are really so many. I'm going to go to a gentleman. He's no longer with us, but he started along with four of his colleagues. He started a church in Nassau, Bahamas, called the Bahamas International Church Ministries. And you may know the name. Some of your listeners and viewers might know the name. But Pastor Miles Monroe was a brilliant pastor, but also a business mind. And he traveled all around the world until his untimely passing back in 2014, always sharing and always pouring to entrepreneurs, business leaders, CEOs, COOs of medium, small, and large corporations. And he would do that in parallel with also being able to pastor the church and have great conversations and workshops with faith leaders. And he was able to bridge both audiences masterfully all of his adult life. I still listen to him. He's been gone for 10 years, but I still listen to him. And it's like he's right there in the room. Be- be- because
Yeah.
at the heart of all of his messages was getting us to think about not just the acumen, but also how we go about caring and pouring into other people. And it just always made a big difference. So, way back in 1993, I read one of his books, Understanding Your Potential, at a time in my life where I really needed it. And it was a game changer. It's a very short paperback book, Understanding Your Potential. And it just really opened up my eyes. Again, the timing, just like with Miss Atkins, the timing was right. And it sent me on a trajectory to go even further than what just Miss Atkins could have done for me. That's the one gentleman that comes to mind, but there are so many others as well. But I would put him right up there.
I'm sure. Well, thank you so much for sharing that. And I hadn't heard of Pastor Miles Monroe before, so I'm going to take a look at some of his information. I'm always interested in
Hmm.
learning to grow and get different perspectives. And so I always appreciate when my guests can share this kind of information. So I'd like to pivot a little bit. We've been talking about servant leadership, but the other thing about servant leadership that really some of the underlying stuff that we haven't quite brought forward, and I want to make explicit now, is really about having influence. And so you've dropped a couple of breadcrumbs on how we can start to increase our influence, but what are some other ideas and ways that if someone's interested in increasing their influence in their circle
Yeah,
and
there's a lot
beyond,
of
how would they
different
go about
things that I
doing
could
that?
unpack, but what I would like to share is, first of all, just being a leader of integrity. Remember now, people are watching. They hear what we say, but they're really watching. And a leader is a role model and an example. And oftentimes people take their lead from just watching you, observing. They're sitting back and saying, what is Alan going to do? What is Alan going to say? How is he going to respond? And so being a person with a high level of integrity, again, one more time, I didn't say a person that's perfect, but have a person with high integrity will increase your influence with others, because your influence is really the ability to get people to show up. But once they show up, now they're going to participate. And as a result of their participation, they're going to contribute. And their contributions now add value to what it is that we're trying to do. Any given project, any contract, any task, any action, any initiative, people's contributions adds value. But they can't contribute unless they participate, and they won't participate unless they show up. So it's our influence. So people are apt to follow a leader that has a high degree of integrity. Another thing I want you to think about is the word faith. We mentioned it earlier, but faith from the context of just having a high degree of confidence and trust and belief in people. It's amazing how people will respond when they know that their leader believes in them, has confidence in them, has faith in them. And how do you know? By the assignments that you receive, by your ability to step in and attend a meeting that perhaps the leader was not able to go to, or tapping you on the shoulder to give that presentation in front of those hundreds of senior leaders. Trust and belief in you and confidence goes a very, very long way to increasing our influence. So those are just a couple of nuggets, couple of tools that we can all add to our toolbox and take out as needed. There are many others as well, but these are just some of the nuggets and the tips that we share around that topic of influence.
Oh, I love those ideas, and that's great. And I see you're also part of a certified coach of the John Maxwell team, and I love John's ideas and concepts around integrity and influence, and I see lots of similarities and resonance.
Yeah, almost 10 years.
Outstanding. Really.
Yeah. Yes.
Nice. Yeah, another amazing pastor that decided to change his career around and move from influencing a single church to influencing so many more people. Really, I think the world is a better place because of that decision.
And he also travels the world, has an opportunity to stand in front of heads of state, presidents, governors all around the world, not just here in the United States, taking a team of individuals with him and making a difference in an entire country, the entire country of Peru, Bolivia. I could go on, because at the presidential level, then it filters down into the schools and the universities and into the businesses and the government agencies. And it does make a difference. If people choose to apply the principles that we learn, the principles that we teach, and start to really look at people as people and not just workers, then together we are well on our way, I believe, to making the world a much better place. And that's why I'm so passionate about the work that we do, because I really believe in it. And when we're teaching, whether it's virtual or in person, I see people's eyes light up because they're hearing things they don't normally hear. And I give examples to validate and to verify what I'm talking about, and the eyes get even bigger. And it gives them the momentum and the courage to now apply what they've learned. And then I can follow up in 3 months to see how are things going. So we don't just drop nuggets and leave, but I like to stay in touch and see how things are going as a part of the journey. Yeah.
Absolutely. Listen, Kevin, you've had a pretty illustrious career yourself. You've authored many books. And so, let's turn the table a little bit back onto yourself here. So what do you consider to be the most fundamental law of growth? And how can we as men
that's probably the easiest question you've asked me, Alan. So leaders are learners. Never allow your thirst to quench, and never allow your hunger to be satisfied when it comes to learning. Listen, I finished a 34-year career. I was very blessed, very fortunate to have great people in my life that sponsored and championed me from the time that I was a young man as a frontline leader then in the middle ranks, and then eventually as a senior leader. I stayed 34 years. I took about 3 months off, and then I stood up the company for a lot of different reasons. But my passion is around this theme of leadership development and pouring into the next generation of leaders, because I recognize that every organization needs to have a phenomenal bench of ready, equipped, and prepared leaders to take over when the existing leadership transitions. We have to have somebody to pass the baton to. And so that's what really motivates me, and that's what really keeps me going on this particular journey. And I'm loving it. That's why I smile so much.
I love it, my friend. I love it. I think you said leaders are readers as
I
well.
did.
And so my next question for you is, is there
Wow, I
what
have
book is
so
sitting
many.
on
So
your
I'm right here in
nightstand
my
today?
home office. You can see some of the books behind me, but I also have a bookcase in front of me as well. Speaking of Miles Monroe again, he has a book that's titled, I'm looking right at it, it's called God's Big Idea. It just gets into how he uses each and every one of us individually to make this world a much better place. That's just one of many. I have so many books. I love a book that probably everybody has heard of. I'm not sure if you read it. It's 4 decades old and it's still selling strong. It's simply titled 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Dr. Steve Covey. And my favorite habit is
Mm-hmm.
habit number 4: begin with the end in mind. That book came out 4 decades
Yeah.
ago, and it's still powerful. Just like Who Moved My Cheese, right around the same time.
Yes.
These are business books, but they apply to all areas of our personal as well as our professional lives. So those are three, Alan, that kind of come to mind. I'm an avid reader, though. I read 1 or 2 books
Nice.
a month. I'm a nonfiction book reader. When I'm flying on
Mm-hmm.
an airplane, I always take about 2 or 3 books with me, and I have a library full of them. I have books all over the house.
Yeah, you and me both, my friend. I just think about, that Seven Habits was probably one of the first books that I read, way back when,
Hmm.
probably not long after it came out, to be honest. And I love the influence of that book. And we use some of those some of the lessons from there in our current men's work and helping guys, plan and be more effective. And love the idea of the
Yeah.
chunking your time off in weeks, focusing on the important stuff in our life, using the Eisenhower matrix. He had a little twist on it. Just so many wonderful things to be a true leader.
Yeah,
That I just
absolutely.
love that book. Glad you've mentioned it. You've mentioned this Miles Monroe, and there's Miss Atkins, but I want you to think back at all the mentors you've had in your life, and there must be a piece of advice that has really stuck with you and resonated, that is still
Yeah,
serving you
so that's the
today. And
second
so tell
easiest
us what
question.
that is.
My dad, I mentioned my dad right out front. We have a great relationship. He's 87 years young, and I'm the oldest of his 2 sons.
Nice.
Dad always told me, long before I had a clue about what he was talking about, just 2 words: be prepared. That's a lesson. I was probably ankle high, and then all through elementary school, all through middle school, high school, and even college, and even as a young adult, as I started my career, he would always tell me, be prepared. And I never really
Yeah.
questioned what he meant, but I always remember hearing it. So I did my best to pay close attention to my academics when I'm in school, when I'm playing sports, be a good teammate, exercise good sportsmanship, all of that in terms of being prepared. But I found out much later in life, I
Yeah.
was already in my 30s, before one day it just hit. And what dad was telling me was that it's always better to be prepared and not have an opportunity than to have an opportunity
Mm.
and not be prepared. That's what he was telling me. He just didn't say it
Wow.
that way. And so that's how I transitioned
That's
it.
right.
That's how I interpreted it. And that's how I applied it. I know because I've had opportunities where I was prepared. and things went well. And I've had opportunities and I took it and I was not prepared and things didn't go well. So I've lived it and I'm able to now share it with others as a food for thought, as a part of what we do to prepare leaders to think about it. Preparation is key. And so from the time I was a little guy, he always told me just those two words, be prepared. And it's really amazing. So now I've raised 3 sons, and as their grandfather, he would tell them that as well. I'm not sure if they ever really knew what he was talking about, but they did their best to do what was right. And that's all we asked of them to do.
Absolutely. And what a great piece of advice. I always, it's one of my favorite questions to ask my guests. Is always curious to see the thing that resonates with them and serve them, because there are things that, we need to hear ourselves and things that we can implement in our lives. So thank you so much, Kevin, for sharing that. Of everything we spoke about today, and maybe there was something we didn't get a chance to touch on, what would be the one takeaway?
Well, I think in this life, and we all know this, but oftentimes when you hear it from a different voice, it has a different ring. Life is short. It goes by so quickly. And I always leave messages to all audiences that do your best based on what you know. And this life is truly fulfilling when you and I make a determination beyond a shadow of a doubt that we are going to serve others. When we serve others, that's where the true fulfillment in this life comes. The question is, in what capacity will you serve? Because we all have different talents. We all have different gifts. We all have different abilities. So we're not going to do the same thing the same way. But I would like for everyone in your audience to think of how you can serve others. That's where you're going to really enjoy fulfillment. And that's really what this life is all about, because it goes by so quickly. Just yesterday, I was raising little babies, and now they're 28, 27, and 26. Where in the world did the time go? So, exactly. Yep.
No kidding. I feel you. I have 30.
Oh boy.
32 and a 29-year-old. It's like, I don't feel that old.
Well, the good news is you don't feel that old, so that's good.
That's right. I just want to say thank you so much, Kevin, for spending time with us today, showing us what leading a principled life is. Really simple. It's not easy to do at all times. But it is possible for us. And so if men are interested in getting a hold of you, participating in your work, our
website is named after the company. So thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com, www.thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com. And my email address is Kevin at thejohnsonleadershipgroup.com. Send us a note. Embedded into the website, if you're interested, is a 20-minute complimentary coaching session if anyone is interested in that. But on the website, you see all of the different activities that we have going on, our certifications, the customers that we work with in the marketplace. It's one of those self-contained, I tell people the website is our electronic brochure is what it is. And so anything you need to know about what we're doing, more than happy to have a conversation with you and work with you, and we'll see where it goes.
Love it. Well, I'll make sure that information, as well as anywhere you're on social media, we'll get that in there as well. Thank you so much, Kevin. I really enjoyed today's conversation.
Thank you, Alan. I appreciate it. Thank you so
having
much.
You on the show.
Thank you for listening to the Revolutionary Man Podcast. Are you ready to own your destiny? To become more the man you are destined to be? Join the brotherhood that is The Awakened Man at theawakenedman.net and start forging a new destiny today.